I think you know who I am. I don't have to introduce myself. I want to say a thank you to my colleagues who are here. The Defense Subcommittee Ranking Member, McCollum, is right there behind me. State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee Ranking Member, Frankel. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, and the gentleman from Hawaii, Mr. Case. Thank you really for being here this afternoon. I want to thank you all for your leadership. And I want to just say to Ms. McCollum and to Representative Frankel, thank you really for for your leadership and making sure that Americans are safe and our military is strong. And also for helping to ensure that America remains a beacon of hope around the world. And for being here to discuss the inhumanity and the disastrous outcomes that we stand to face as a result of the Trump administration's attacks on USAID. I thanks, of course, to everyone who has joined for helping to share this critical information with the American people. You know, I think it's self-evident that the nation is facing an extraordinary crisis. Donald Trump is attempting to claim absolute power for the presidency. And Trump has given Elon Musk, an unaccountable billionaire with immense conflicts of interest, unprecedented access to is supporting a right-wing Nazi party in Germany, demanding Germany first, giving a Nazi salute as his henchmen shutter the USAID offices who are doing humanitarian work around the world. The Trump-Musk agenda is not America first. His agenda is America alone. Our nation and the world will suffer for this. We have seen President Trump illegally freeze and revoke lawfully enacted, congressionally appropriated funding across a wide swath of government activities. He has taken steps to move USAID, an independent agency established by President Kennedy, enshrined by an act in the Congress, into the fold of the State Department while greatly reducing its capacity and its capabilities. Indulge me for a moment for some International Relations 101. There is hard power and there is soft power. Hard power is our military. Soft power is everything else. Our diplomacy, our cultural influence, our humanitarian role, which all add up to our ability to win the hearts and minds of the people of this world. When we are helping impoverished communities and nations treat HIV, AIDS, and other diseases, when we are feeding starving children in conflict zones, and when we help ensure villages have drinkable water, we are using and gaining soft power. We do these things because they are the right thing to do. We, as the world's wealthiest nation, have a moral obligation to reduce needless suffering. But we also do these things because we cannot afford to lose influence and power to our adversaries. When we retreat from the global stage, China and Russia fill in the gaps, and the world becomes a more dangerous place. Whose name is on that sack of flour delivered in these places? Whose name is attached to the well to provide people with water? Whose name will it be? China, Russia, Iran are cheering what this administration is doing. They are desperate to step into the void when America gives up on its international promises and its commitments. They would love to step into the void, convince growing and emerging economies that the United States is unreliable and that they should partner with China, with Russia instead. People know who cured their disease, who put food on their table. They know the United States has genuinely partnered with them on this and so much more for decades. And they will immediately know when we are no longer there. People should understand that USAID's priorities are also our priorities. Countering fentanyl, strengthening food security, reaffirming the United States as a global leader, But when we give up all of this, when we are unable to use soft power to resolve conflicts, hard power is all that is left. We cannot retreat from the world stage under the guise of putting, quote, America first. We put America first by demonstrating the power of American leadership, that we have the strength and resolve in the heart to fight for the most vulnerable people and protect their freedom and preserve their dignity. America cannot look away while millions starve. America cannot turn a blind eye to widespread preventable communicable disease. America cannot endure needless and immense suffering in the Ukraine, Sudan, Haiti, the Middle East, and in other conflict areas. And while reviewing programs for effectiveness should always be a part of our responsibilities, shutting down USAID wholesale would unequivocally lead to more illness, more suffering, and more death. And it thwarts the law. What they are doing with USAID defies USAID's legally mandated statutory independence. Congress's requirements in the Appropriations Act tramples on a whole host of other laws and rules that protect civil servants and secure sensitive information. The order to recall all USAID personnel from their overseas posts betrays our partners and the people around the world that depend on the United States and endangers government property left deserted. For the sake of the safety and the security of Americans and the entire free world, for the sake of the most vulnerable among us, and for the sake of the rule of law, we must reverse the recent USAID order and bring USAID workers back today. We must reopen USAID offices. We must resume this funding, and we must stop this lawless administration in its tracks. With that, let me ask to come to the podium.
To serve on the Authorizing Committee of Foreign Affairs under Henry Hyde and watch Republicans and Democrats work together to put together PEPFAR, Plans for Maternal Child Health, and then travel to do my congressional oversight duties around there. And when you're greeted with families who have now had a mother who maybe had a pregnancy and they didn't know if she was going to survive it, and she goes back to her family, they are grateful. The people that I met receiving HIV/AIDS treatment, amazing, the transformation. When I had the opportunity to do my oversight work, and Rosa's right, we need to do oversight. We need to make sure that these programs are delivering. That's our responsibility. That's the administration's responsibility, but there's a proper way to do it, and then there's a way that President Trump and Mr. Musk are doing it, which is just illegal and unconstitutional. I want to talk about the intersection between public health and our service members who are often places. You know, when there's a malaria outbreak, when there is a outbreak in a country of cholera, or things like that, we've always had U.S. aid on the ground, working with our embassy, working with other trusted nations to make sure that we stop the spread or we work to reduce the spread of these diseases. That has an impact on our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are exposed when they go into Latin America, when they go into places in Asia, when they go into places in Africa, to the conditions of public health in those countries may be affecting their health. So being on the ground and having people there working on it is a twofer. One, it protects our service members when they're deployed in those areas. And two, the soft power of seeing the United States of America being there, delivering healthcare is huge. So now what's happened is people don't have confidence in us in other countries. We're walking away. We're abandoning them. We're abandoning the people that we helped train to be doctors and nurses and medical assistants in many of these countries. We're walking away from the Future program, which I helped develop, in which we have farmers be able to be more successful, learn how to do the second step, but we call it value-added marketing. I'm from Minnesota. I can talk ag, but we're here to talk about what's happening in USA. But it is amazing. It transforms villages, it transforms lives, and people celebrate the work that we do. And now we're just pulling out. The cost of aid is minuscule when you consider it's, barely 1% of our overall budget. And when we invest, and we invest early, we pay ourselves a dividend in return. And I'm actually going to quote because I want to get it right. So when President Trump was president the first time, he had a person in the ilk of Secretary General Mathis. And he said to our committee, because they were cutting State Department, they were cutting USA, they were looking at cutting them. And I quote from him, it's a cost-benefit ratio. One is an olive branch, the sign of peace and unity. The other one is arrows. The United States eagle looks at the soft power of diplomacy, but it's ready to go if it needs to defend the nation. That is what we need to do. We need to stand up for USAID, we need to stand up for development, we need to stand up for diplomacy, and we need to keep our national security strong, and that's how we do it. It's the 3 Ds. And the Defense Department can't make up for the other two all by itself, and it will mean the loss of more American lives at the end if we don't get this right.
Thank you. Let me now ask the ranking member of the State Foreign Operations Committee, Congresswoman Lois Frankel, to speak this. Mr. Hoyer, why don't you come on up?
Thank you. Thank you to all my colleagues for your leadership. Thank you. I often say this, before I am a member of Congress, I'm a mother and a grandmother. And probably one of my proudest days of my life was sitting at graduation at Quantico, where my son became a lieutenant in the United States Marines. That was one of my proudest days. Then it led to some of my scariest times, because I saw my son sent to war both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And we were blessed, our family. He came home safe, but I can tell you, so many of his colleagues and parents who sat with me at that graduation, they lost their sons and daughters. And when I came to Congress, one of my missions was clear: do everything possible to keep our patriots who serve to protect our freedom out of harm's way. And I joined the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I traveled the world. I can't name all the countries, but I went to Afghanistan, Iraq, Jordan, Ukraine, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Armenia, Panama, Peru, Taiwan, China. I could go on and on, but I saw American action. Yes, I visited some military bases, but I also saw USA working to educate the young children who had fled Syria, and they were in Jordan. And I saw CARE operating a health center in Kenya, and I witnessed aid workers trying to build civil society in Ukraine. When watching what's going on, which is an unmitigated crisis, with the dismantling of USAID, I say it's like taking an egg and dropping it on the ground, because I'm not sure they're going to be able to put it back together. But we see the Trump administration dismantling one of our most critical tools that make us safer, more secure, and more prosperous. And let's just be clear, I'll repeat what my colleague said. When you dismantle USAID, it doesn't save us money, it costs us economically, strategically, and morally. Because foreign assistance is not a mere handout, it's a strategy. It prevents crises before they escalate, strengthens our own economy, and upholds our values. And because here's what happens: stable countries become trade partners, not threats. Conflict prevention stops costly wars before they start. Global health investments keep pandemics from reaching our shores. Empowering women and girls builds stronger, safer, societies. Food assistance costs pennies, but it saves millions of children's lives. And all of these programs are being halted. I'm not sure, they say it's in the name of our national security, but that's not right. And I'll repeat, Benny, what you said, because I think that quote, I'm paraphrasing, one of the generals who worked under Trump, which is if you don't fund diplomacy and aid, then you need to buy more ammunition. And I'll tell you what, you have more heartbreak of those parents who go to those graduations of the Patriots. And if we pull back, China and Russia is going to step in. So this dismantling of USAID is short-sighted and dangerous. And I join my colleagues when we say we will not sit back and let it happen. We need to fight for an America that leads, that turns its back on the world. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Just a word, I want to ask our other colleagues, Mr. Hoyer, Mr. Quigley, Mr. Case, to say something. But we have all been blessed, all of us, in serving in this institution, where we do get to travel around the world and get to see our servicemen and women. We get to see military installations, but we get to see what America is doing around the globe. And when you look at a PEPFAR program, George W. Bush, the vision of understanding what the United States had to do. This is someone who gets it, who knows why he was in the position that he was in. And when you get to see the care workers, and that money, by the way, is inflowing. I spoke to Save the Children last night. They told me about CARE and Mercy Corps and all this. They're not getting their money. No. And while it says that the money we're getting humanitarian assistance, it's not there. They haven't been able to draw down the money that they're doing. And when you just see what they do, and when you talk to the people who receive those services, and especially children, when their eyes light up, they get as big as, I'm old, $50. That's as old as I am. I remember the $50. It's there, it's beautiful to see. And that's the United States of America on the ground, around the world, dispensing the kinds of services that people need to survive, but it is about us surviving as well. Let me ask Steny Hoyer, who is the ranking member on FSGG, Financial Services and Government Services.
I've been here for 44 years. This is unprecedented. Illegal, contrary to the Constitution, contrary to the separation of powers. And let me tell you why this is being done. The nominee for OMB is a guy named Russell Vought. I want to give you a quote from Mr. Vought. "We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that," and he refers specifically in this instance to EPA, but it could have been any agency or this agency, "can't do all the rules against our energy industry because they have no bandwidth financially to do so. We want to put them in trauma." That is not why I came to Congress. That is not why I think the American people sent me or my colleagues to Congress, to infuse trauma in our federal employees. In this instance, Mr. Musk and Mr. Vought have shot a bullet at federal employees. And what my colleagues have indicated is millions of people unknown to either Mr. Musk or Mr. Vaughn or to Mr. Trump are being hit. Children who can't get food. Moms who can't get medical assistance. Others who cannot get what they need to survive. And who's watching? China's watching. Who's watching? Putin in Russia is watching. Who's watching? Iran. All the enemies of America are watching America retreat from reaching out to lift people up, to give them a sense of security and that America cares. What is happening? We are going to leave a void that will undermine the security of America and Americans. And leave people wondering what has happened in America. Have they lost their soul? Have they lost their willingness to help? Franklin Roosevelt said, and others have said, to those whom much is given, much is required. Less than 1% of our budget in our case. But it is a way of saying to the world, yes, we understand that we are our brother's keeper. Our Bible tells us so. And yet, in the 15 days of this administration, they have done what no other administration in history has done, or should have done. They have undermined faith in America. A sense that America is the moral nation, the beacon on the hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. I fear for my country. And I urge President Trump to reconsider these actions. Not only because I represent a lot of federal employees, but because those federal employees help millions of Americans every day, here and around the world. I hope that we reconsider. I hope that we show the best of us, not the worst of us. And I thank my colleagues for all the work they do every day to ensure that America is the country that we want to be. You do not abandon friends and those in need and be judged a great country again.
Congressman Quigley.
As co-chair of the Ukraine caucus, it's Ukraine Week here in D.C. I've been to Ukraine 4 times since Putin's army invaded. Think of the aid and the energy that is being now lost, pulled out from under the people of Ukraine, the largest land war since the Second World War. As part of a 3-legged stool. You take away one of the legs, you imperil the entire country. Second, you have to imagine that Putin sees this as an extraordinary victory. You have to imagine that Putin sees this as the first stage of America pulling out of its commitment to Ukraine and why we were there to support them. For all the reasons we fought the Second World War, to prevent a sovereign democratic country from being wiped off the face of the earth. So to friends and foe alike, this is a message that that commitment is no longer there. The new world order created after the Second World War is now in peril. So for despots and tyrants across the world, this is a message. The United States commitment is not there anymore. That's why we have to fight this order. We have to push back. Remember our friends and allies, because in the FDR's last inaugural, his shortest, he said what I thought are his most important words. What we have learned is that our well-being is dependent upon the well-being of countries across the oceans. It is indeed a lesson we need to still learn.
Congressman Ed Case from Hawaii.
For 3 generations now, across a number of different efforts, the benefits, not only to our country, but to our world, that leadership, of that incurring those costs, of that moral leadership of our world, have been far more worth those costs. And today, as my colleague Mr. Quigley said, that understanding of 3-generation leadership of our world is at great peril. Now make no mistake, the last days and weeks have seen great cheering in parts of the world. The Chinese Communist Party and its leaders can scarcely conceal their glee at what they see. The leaders of Russia, likewise, they're probably on the phone every day comparing notes on how happy they are. The best thing for them and the worst thing for us is to compromise our influence, our ability to project our values and our power across the world. They are very happy that the Department of Defense has been taken up its mission to deal with chaos and confusion inside that particular department. And they are overjoyed that we have now physically, visually, and in other ways undermined the very pillars of our non-defense assistance throughout the world. That makes them happy. And to be honest, it also creates great fear and concern in our friends and allies around this world. Because anybody that tells you that this country can survive and prosper in this world alone, on our own, does not really have a clue about how this world is working today. And so, although I fully support this budget, these efforts, as a matter of our non-defense foreign policy, because they are the right thing to do, because they project our values out into the world, values that have stood the test of time, but also as a member of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, very directly, because this is national security. And anybody who believes that we can prosper out there in the world through a projection only of defense has no clue about how this world is working. That's why this is so important. That's why this cannot be allowed to stand, whether it's a matter of legal right or as a matter of sound policy. And I'll give you a couple of examples, and there are dozens of examples all over the place. Let's take, for example, the attempt of the People's Republic of China to sow misinformation around this world. It's one of the biggest challenges we have, is that people are being told things that are not true. Our foreign policy projects an approach and techniques and ability to counter misinformation. It's not a defense effort. That's a non-defense foreign policy effort. Do we consider that to be insignificant to our national security, that China can control the discussion, can control the information? That's a policy that is endangered by this administration. Let's take another example. Many of our countries around the world are very fragile democracies, and they are open to great persuasion by the People's Republic of China and others. Our institutions, our policies, have provided them with the tools to strengthen their democracies, to have better overall governance, to educate people on why it is important to have the best practices of government. Do we not believe that that's important? Of course it's important. Because, hey, we can have a great Department of Defense, but if we're not facing and dealing with democracies anymore, that's a pretty hard nut. We are helping people out there in the world, very small, very poor countries, with the basic infrastructure that they need to succeed. Let's talk about digital connectivity. one of the key areas where we can help. And yet, this is not considered important by this administration? Of course it's important. And you know what? Go to any military leader in this country, worth his or her salt, who is out there in the world, on the front lines of projecting our defense effort, and they will tell you in no uncertain terms that they cannot do it alone. They can't do it alone only on military force. It's not going to work. It must be complemented by other efforts. And they are also telling you that they cannot do it alone as a matter of country partnerships. Some of our strongest advances over the last decade or so have been in the forging of alliances and partnerships out there in the world to counter the geopolitical challenges of our time. So obviously we're dealing here with national security. And as one person from another country, who will go unnamed for the time being, said, and this country happens to be in that part of the world where football means something different than it does in this country. They characterize this as an on goal. We all know that an on goal is when a player kicks it in to his or her own goal. I certainly hope this is not an on game, but I certainly fear that we have done great damage already. Not irreversible damage, but great damage.
Thank you. I'm going to open it to questions. I just wanted to say there's some consistency in what the Republicans do. There's many, many young people in this room, but I think some folks will remember the name of Grover Norquist, who many years ago said, we are going to shrink the size of government so that it can be drowned in a bathtub. And so consistently over the years, it is where the Republican parties want to go, is to constrain and to narrow the focus of what we can do in terms of changing people's lives at the federal level. And just one more comment, which is about Elon Musk. The nerve.
Let's see from the,
Well, I think you have mentioned some things. It's 217 to 215. That in itself tells you about the leverage that Democrats have. There is an ability to be able to, in the Senate, to be able to block appointments, block votes, etc. A lot of this is going to be litigated in the courts. Now, we don't have standing to be able to sue, but we certainly are working with and talking with all the organizations out there who are engaged in this effort. So, and the Democrats are united in that fact. Out there it says that we're not, we are. We are fighting back. You know, I think the better question is, and maybe you have asked them already, what do our Republican colleagues think about all of this? Let's stand at their doors and find out what they think is the right thing to do. There are a lot of good people, a lot of well-meaning people that we have all worked with across the aisle. Where are they now? When, I was asked a question earlier in the day by from the media. Is it a constitutional crisis? Yes, it is. But it's a constitutional crisis with unbelievable, devastating effects on human lives. And that's what we need to focus on. Somebody else had a call. Ian.
How are you planning on addressing this in the final fiscal 2025 budget?
Well, look, I've said from the outset, there's two tracks in this process. We have a commitment, we have a responsibility, all of us. We're all appropriators. Mr. Hoyer, we're all appropriators, which is why we're here today. We have a responsibility to pass the bills in order to get 2025 the resources that are necessary to continue. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, Mr. Cole, myself, Senators Murray and Collins, we were prepared to meet a December 20th deadline. All of us were prepared to meet a December 20th deadline. We could have done that. We were told, and it had a lot to do with the political reasons and the internal politics of the Republican side, that we were going to move this date to March 14th. That was a decision by the Speaker of the House. That's the decision. That's what our goal should be. So now, I just for 1 second, I don't forget, we don't forget, we hammered out a deal in December. It was House, Senate, Democrats, Republicans, the Speaker, the White House at the time. We hammered out the deal. We go to the floor for a vote. Elon Musk says to Republicans, don't vote for the bill, and works to derail it. Imagine. The process worked. You know, when people want to say, well, they can't get along, they can't do anything together, we hammered out a bill. You win some, you lose some, but you go forward. Two things, we need to go forward with a March 14th date and see what we can do and try to get it done. We think we can get it done. We can get the top line, which we're working on at the moment. But at the same time, let me be very, very clear, and we are clear with our Republican colleagues, that we're not going to be engaged and get an agreement to move forward, and then some third party decides that this is not to his liking. No, we have to have assurances that this is not going to happen. Those are the two tracks. We want to be responsible. I don't want to see a CR, short term. I don't want to see a year-long CR. We don't want to see the government shut down. We don't want sequestration, which hurts the defense industry. We want to move forward and willing to meet any time, any place, anywhere to hammer it out. We can do it. We can do it. We have the will to do it. We have to have the will on the other side. You have to have a partner. You can't negotiate without a partner.
How can you be sure that the Trump administration will honor any appropriations deal that you do come to in March?
Well, you know, it's funny, please, I want my colleagues to join me in this. Yeah. I think I said something like this in December. The only thing we have in this institution is our words and our credibility. And when we commit to doing something, we commit to doing it. That's why I'm asking, we are going to have assurances that whatever agreement we come to is just not going to be, exploded, and it's going to be overrun. But we are, and we will be talking about those assurances and what they are, and building those.
And remember, we can't bring things to court because we don't have standing. There are court cases all over the United States right now. And the two questions need to be asked. Are the actions of this executive branch, are they legal, and are they constitutional? And I say they fail in appropriations law in both ways. When we send a bill to the president's desk and the president signs it, it becomes statute. It becomes law. It becomes appropriations law. And I watched President Trump in his first administration get really cute with some of the funding during this shutdown in the Parks Department. And even got a report back saying they broke appropriations law, what they did was wrong. But there's no punishment because he lost the election and we moved on. So they've already attempted this in earlier reiterations in the first term. Now, what he's doing has gone beyond that. It is unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Once again, I taught social studies, and anybody who paid attention when they even took government classes in grade school knows that the power of the purse, the appropriations process, starts and stops with the Appropriations Committee. We can negotiate things. We can change things. That's part of the budget process. That's part of what happens after a budget. But he needs to consult Congress, and he's not doing that. So what's happening is chaos and confusion, and it's chaos and confusion because the American people in their hearts know it's illegal and it's unconstitutional.
I just want to close my part, plant to goes. I tell people that the Republicans I work with on the Appropriations Committee are the normal Republicans, and they are. They're folks you can work with. I like them. I just want a commitment from them to acknowledge that appropriations, when passed into law, are not advisory. The law of the land, the president can't violate that. Thank you.
They should just look at school boards at Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
You know, how
Bill,
they're
I
doing.
I just wanted to ask, I'm Tricia Zegerly from Reuters, and this is just a small piece of the whole issue, but it's a very important one. What do you think that everything going on means for chances of getting Pet Farm funded again, given that it was already getting, attacked in a different way last year before all of this?
Okay, well, I would tell you, that's been go ahead.
No, you can.
I was just saying, this has been a bipartisan effort.
Yeah, until last year.
And my hope, I wish I would call on him if I had access to being able to reach him, is George W. Bush. This is his legacy.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, people are reaching out, the people who need to speak up and to talk about its value and the lives being saved. Go ahead.
I think, my understanding is that they were going to partially start up Pet Farm. Here's the problem. There is no one there to implement anything. The humanitarian waivers, there's nothing, it's not being implemented. There's no one to do it. I mean, it's total chaos out there in the field and here with contractors, recipients, nation partners.
Yeah.
Everything has stopped.
So with the March 14th bill coming though,
Yeah.
Especially with the recent thing with Mozambique and the people who were found to have been doing abortions, to get a little into the weeds, sorry.
It's okay.
But do you think there's any chance it'll get?
Well, I think if you saw the conversations coming out afterward, everybody, the people who spoke about it understood if there was a mistake made,
And they corrected it.
corrected.
Talking about it was a $4,000 mistake out of a $62 billion USAID budget. So, I mean, that was corrected. I don't think that's going to be the issue of the day. I mean, they use little anecdotal things to try to justify a humanitarian and a security crisis here. Because here, I want to just say one more thing about this. Because this security issue, we have a president who says he wants to have peace. But the people who are advising him don't seem to understand that when people are hungry and uneducated, when they are in poverty, that brings terrorism, and we are not going to be safer. It also breeds pandemics, and we're not going to be healthier. And as I said before, it means less people for us to trade with, less nations to trade with, and an opening for China. So this is a recipe for disaster, and that's what we have right now.
I'm hopeful that with the Pet Farm thing, that when people did make their statements, they acknowledged the difficulties, but they said that the program had saved millions of lives, and that we can come together, Democrats and Republicans, correct the situation, see that it doesn't happen, again, put in whatever, guardrails one needs to, but move forward on the program and purchase. And so far, we haven't, seen, I guess there was one senator who said we should, do it in, but everybody else was commented, just talked about the value, as Congresswoman Frankel, has talked about.
Thank you.
Hey,
Are you looking for specific language on USAID in the final appropriations bills, or just wider assurances about empowerment more generally? Would that be written in the bill?
well, we're looking at what language we need to do to keep them from overturning what we negotiate and what we put together. There will be other discussions about what further kinds of.
But we shouldn't even need to do that.
No. It's so funny. When they came out with the 3 executive orders, then with the OMB memo. And then they said, well, they rescinded the memo. They had no business sending out the memo. They don't have the constitutional authority to do that. And now they have said rescinding, But as people have pointed out, there are many portals still closed, and people can't get access.
I think we should say one more thing. This does not lower the cost of people, what's going on. It doesn't lower the costs, which is what I think the president primarily.
That's what you bring up.
Yeah.
This is not about dealing with cost of living.
No.
You know, he was the first day one, drive down the bus. I have to say this, Lois, when you talked about people without, you know, without food, without hunger, something, what it breeds. Think back in history. French Revolution was over the cost of bread, being able to get bread. So there is really national security, efforts here. But he's done nothing but thwart the ability for people to get lower prices wherever. Okay, thank you one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.